We are, USA Today, throughout the year, are going to be celebrating women. We're going to be talking about extraordinary accomplishments, especially women who've been helping women. We know this pandemic has been particularly impactful on women, and that's what we want to talk to you about today, the road ahead. As you've written yourself, more than 2.5 million women have left the workforce. Many have lost jobs in industries hurt by the pandemic. Others have had to leave because of childcare or caretaking. So 2020 was devastating, and we'd love to hear your vision for our country and for its women in 2021.
So the pandemic has been devastating to so many families, to our economy, to our children. And in the midst of this profound crisis, and actually crises, I think there are so many heroes and angels who have been exposed for their courage, for the value and the importance of their work, and for their courage to keep doing it even in the face of exposing themselves and their families to harm, and in particular exposure to COVID. I think of, in particular, how I was raised, and there are 3 women who had a profound impact on who I am today. And in the midst of the pandemic, I have realized and reflected on their work and how the importance of their work has been highlighted through the pandemic. So, my first grade teacher, Mrs. Frances Wilson, attended my law school graduation. She was like every teacher I've known, invested, dedicated. It convinced me and all of her students that we could be and do anything. And during the course of COVID, even just this week, I visited with educators, Dr. Green, who's the superintendent of the Duval County School District in Florida. And she was describing how teachers and educators have been going to the bus stops where the school bus normally went to make sure they were there to bring food to the kids who are facing so many challenges. She described how they have what they call blessings in a backpack, and how educators in schools that are open have been filling the kids' backpacks on the Friday afternoon, knowing that they're going to go home and probably over the weekend not have any food. We call it food insecurity. Teachers, just the heroes among us. I think about my second mother, so Miss Shelton, who lived 2 doors down from us when I was growing up. My mother worked long days and she worked weekends often, and my sister and I would walk down to Miss Shelton's house, and she was our second mother, and she took care of us, and she actually also had a daycare center. We lived on top of the daycare center in the apartment above, and she took care of all the local mothers and fathers and their children. And so the importance of the caregiving economy and daycare and childcare. And that's Miss Shelton. I think about people like Dr. Kizzy Corbett, the scientist who contributed to the discovery of the vaccine that I actually took and so many of us have taken, and what these scientists have done in terms of exposing not only the seriousness of this pandemic, but developing and creating the things that will save us and save lives. And my mother was a scientist. My mother had 2 goals in her life: to raise her 2 daughters and end breast cancer. And she would actually take us to the lab with her often. And I watched how these scientists, they have this passion. It's a deep passion to improve human life and condition, and to see what is possible, unburdened by what has been, to see what can be. So those are some of the things that I've been thinking about during the course of the pandemic. And of course, all of the folks I'm talking about are women. And it really highlights, I think, the work that women have historically done and the work that women are doing currently.
As we know, Black and Brown women have borne the brunt of this crisis in healthcare, jobs, caretaking, et cetera. Um, it's just different for women of color. It's more critical, it's more devastating. What are the answers? How can we pay special attention to these folks?
So, listen, I think that the pandemic has exposed the failures, the fractures, the fissures that have long existed in our society, and has made them bigger and more obvious. We had racial disparities long before this pandemic struck. And when we talk specifically about Black women, take, for example, the fact that even before this pandemic, Black women were 3 to 4 times likely to suffer from maternal mortality, to die during childcare and childbirth than other women. Let's take, for example, what we have seen during the course of the pandemic, which is that Black folks are exponentially more likely to contract the virus and die from it because of longstanding disparities around the delivery of healthcare and healthcare accessibility. And when we talk about Black women specifically, you can look at the frontline workers. Those folks who, be it in childcare or in healthcare, who throughout the pandemic have been going to work every day, often taking public transportation, exposing themselves during the course of getting to work, much less at work, to the virus, and but doing the work that has actually been about saving lives, but taking a much bigger toll in terms of the harm that they've experienced from not only exposure to the virus, but exposure to the inequities around pay, around paid family leave, around paid sick leave, around affordable childcare. These are all issues that have disproportionately impacted Black women in the workforce. I'm told the majority of minimum wage workers are women and women of color, right? And by the way, federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour, and the math on that is that's $15,000 a year, all right? And we are talking about those same jobs disproportionately being jobs that do not give paid sick leave, paid family leave. Those are jobs that make childcare unaffordable. And so what do we need to do? We need to have a commitment to universal paid sick leave, paid family leave. We need to have, and this is part of what we have done in the American Rescue Plan, saying that childcare needs to be affordable and available, because we have many places in the country, including our rural communities, that are experiencing what we call childcare deserts. So even before the pandemic, there just was not childcare, it was not available, and it certainly was not affordable. So these are some of the things that we need to do. We also need to value the dignity of work. And when we look at the jobs that women are performing, in particular in lower wage positions, these are the jobs that invariably are about caring for other human beings. And we as a society should value that. It's an incredible gift that they give us as a society. But we have sadly diminished our recognition of its value and the reflection of our diminishing appreciation of its values, that we're not paying people enough money to do the work that they're doing.
And just to follow up on that, and you mentioned this, but one of the main reasons women leave the workforce is childcare. What should the federal government's role be in childcare?
Well, one of the things that the president and I have been advocating throughout, for each of us throughout our careers, is we need to have a national commitment to affordable childcare. And in many cases, the reason for that is that people are paying almost more for childcare than they're paying for college tuition. If my mother, that every mother would have a Miss Shelton in your life who lives 2 doors down, who can help take care of your kids. And often the situation is that childcare is more expensive than their salary. So it's both in terms of what we do to pay people their value, but also have a national commitment to affordable childcare. We do that in the American Rescue Plan, and there are billions of dollars that we have put into the childcare system and also into what we need to do around extending, for example, at least during the course of the pandemic, everything from unemployment benefits to what we're going to do in terms of extending benefits for the folks around the $1,400 checks.
Since you've been in office since January, what have you learned about issues facing women? What has surprised you? What resources are there, bright spots, and where are the disparities?
Well, I've been focused on issues affecting women and girls my whole career. So I think while I've been in office, the things that I've known before have been reinforced, to be sure. And it relates to, again, for example, for the years that I was a prosecutor, I specialized in in crimes against women and children. And we have seen during the course of the pandemic when women and children are isolated and alone in that way, that we are seeing higher incidence of abuse. And it does highlight the importance of having a social service structure, having a structure where we have the ability to have safe places for women and children to go, so that they can be free of harm and live in safety. We have also seen that among large populations of women and their children, that there is a lack of support in terms of, again, what we need to do around childcare and all of those issues. These are things that we've been working on for years, understanding that women should not have to be presented with false choices that say you either have a career or you raise your children. They should be able to do both. And so these are some of the issues that have been highlighted during the course of my time in this position, which of course has been during the pandemic. So a lot of my time as vice president has been defined by meeting the challenges of the pandemic and what we need to do to rescue folks who are suffering and barely surviving and get through this.
And obviously you've been a major part of the American Rescue Plan, and the president has said you're the first one in the room and you're the last one to leave the room at these meetings. So what does it mean? What impact does it have when women are front and center of recovery efforts? Do the discussions or outcomes differ when women are at the table?
Well, not only first and last, but throughout the meeting in the room, participating. And, helping to shape the discussion and to inform the decisions. And the president has been very generous in seeking my input and participation. So I have to say that about him. He really is really great that way, and in many ways. Look, one of the things that I've been focused on is what we need to do to support small business owners, and I've been meeting in particular with women small business owners. And again, the childcare issue comes up, but also access to capital. I'm working with Janet Yellen, our first woman Treasury Secretary, on what we can do to support community banks, they're called CDFIs, and get more resources there to get greater access to capital for our small business owners, with, again, a priority around women and minority-owned businesses. Understanding that before the pandemic, women were one of the fastest growing groups of entrepreneurs in our country. And be it the women I've met who own and run a beauty salon, to the women I've met who have a knitting store and these incredible yarns, to the women I've met who are running small businesses that are focused on software development. And we want to make sure that there's an equal opportunity for access to capital for them to not only start their business but grow their business. So this has been one of the areas of focus. Another area of focus, and so this is part of the discussions we have in those rooms, is what we need to do around acknowledging disparities. So what we've been talking about, racial disparities, gender disparities. There is actually a bill that I had when I was in the Senate around creating a racial disparities task force, and that is incorporated in our American Rescue Plan and the work we are doing to track disparities in terms of how populations have been affected by COVID, by the pandemic, by what we are doing or should be doing in terms of delivering resources to folks who need them. So these are some of the things. Pay equity, big issue that we have been talking a lot about and with a need to address in a very serious way. Huge disparities. I think women generally 82 cents on the dollar, black women 62 cents on the dollar, Native women 57, Latinas 54. So there's the work we need to do there. And also back to the point about the dignity of work, the work we need to do to fight for working women, to make sure they are receiving the wages and benefits they deserve for their work. I convened women labor leaders recently, who are everything from women who are working construction sites and building trades, to the women who are teachers, to the women who are frontline workers in the healthcare and services industry, home healthcare workers. And I brought those labor leaders together, those women labor leaders together, to say, let's work together on supporting women who are in the workforce in every capacity to make sure they are receiving the dignity they deserve, and the dignity being reflected in their wages and their benefits.
So many women are struggling right now. They're stretched thin with childcare, demanding jobs. We would like to hear from you. Leave America's women with a message, please.
I'm going to look in the camera for this one. First of all, know you are not alone. These have been difficult, hard times, and where you've got to sit at your kitchen table after the kids have gone to sleep, where you're trying to figure out how to make ends meet, how to get through it all. Know you are not alone. Know that you are supported. Know that your voice is strong. It's strong. And don't let any circumstance diminish that or take your power from you. You are powerful. You are powerful. And when we all stand together, that's when we are our best selves. And so let's continue to know we are not alone. We are all in this together. And keep doing what you do, because you have an incredible amount of courage. You have an incredible amount of conviction. You are dedicated. Know that is the sign of strength. It is the sign of strength. The measure of strength, in my opinion, is based not on who you beat down. It's based on who you lift up. And I know you're lifting up people every day. You are strong.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this video, check out these other videos from USA Today to stay up to date with all the latest news.